Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. Hi, I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership Facilitator and Coach.
And I'm Chris Cody, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. As we get started, I'd love for you to visit maxwellleadership.com/podcast. There you can click on this podcast and fill out a form. One of the things I want to encourage you to do is as you're listening to this podcast, these are really mini coaching sessions for you. And one of the fastest growing parts of what we do, based off the request of those around the world, is our coaching business.
Yes.
And we do a lot of one-on-one at all levels in organizations, do a lot of group coaching.
Yep.
Matter of fact, Perry was on a couple of this week of large companies that have teams that we're group coaching and working through. So, man, if that interests you and if we can help you in any way, I'd love for you to fill out that form. Let one of our team members reach out and talk through that with you. Well, today's topic is, has employee engagement gotten worse?
Is it possible?
Well, that's what I was saying. When I originally read the title, I was like, well, listen, I know where it was at. And I was like, are you serious? Is it really getting a lot worse? And this is a serious challenge and a leadership issue that we got to continue to talk about. Now, the first thing I think about is this is great job security for you and I, for those that at least are self-aware that understand. But we pull our data from Gallup, and so they sent out another engagement survey, and Perry brought some data that we're going to talk a little bit about today that, man, it really opened my eyes to say we have got to do some things. And so that, you know, when they are unengaged, they're detached from us. The reason they're detached is because they don't have clarity, they're not satisfied in what they're doing. The organization might not be developing them. There's not a tie to the mission and purpose. All those things you've probably heard about as buzzwords. And so, man, when that is the case, we're going to have disengaged people. They're going to feel like we don't care about them. So let's dive into some of the data, and then let's talk about maybe some solutions.
And I will be clear, we do teach that employee engagement is a leadership issue. You absolutely have to be addressing this. This is from a Gallup survey that was most recent, and saying that, you know, through 2020, 2021, it was engagement was tracked at a certain level. By the end of 2023, only 33% of employees were highly engaged, meaning they were involved, enthusiastic, had energy in the workplace, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, as it came into 2024, this has continued this downward trend. Engagement's dropping 3 percentage points and 30% now between full and part-time. What I thought was interesting was they started in their survey work, as this kind of plays into our leading multi-generational teams. They were looking at how are the different generational constituencies in the workplace affected. As a baby boomer, proud to give a strong report that the baby boomers were actually, our engagement had increased. The only thing I can think there was problems, bring me problems, we'll solve problems.
Listeners, okay, you need to know we disagree on this report from Gallup.
Let's move to yours. Let's move to Gen X employees. Christopher, let's see, could you explain?
Christopher, sounds like a baby boomer, like my mom calling me.
You have declined 4% from 35 to 31%, which is almost falling off the edge of the table. And then most dramatic decline, and really where I want to go with this conversation today, is that our youngest workers, our youngest teammates, the older group of millennials, which would be 1980 to 1990, you look at millennials in two groups, kind of 80s to 90s and 90s to 2000. And if you're not familiar, we have a lot of podcasts on this, but the difference being that the earlier millennials had a cell phone. The later millennials had a smartphone. When the internet attacked, and it became a whole different engagement tool, and the screens got smaller, it got a lot. The 90s millennials had a much different upbringing. And then the youngest of the group, the Gen Zs, have experienced a 5-point decline in that. So just looking at in the different constituencies all across the board, except for the baby boomer, who are retiring at 10,000 per day, I think, or something, some big number that they're leaving the workforce. You're left with these younger workers, your Gen Y and Gen Z, who are struggling in the workplace. And I just wonder, I'll bring that forward to give you a couple of thoughts on. You saw the survey as well, but
yeah. So for us, let's talk a little bit about this millennials and the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation, and where they've seen the greatest decline. And so one of the things that we want to provide for you is the why behind that. What is what is going on there, and that's dropping that. So here are a couple of things to be aware of that will be very, very impactful on whether or not they're engaged or not with the team. Is, hey, are they feeling cared about by someone at work, right? Do they care for me? We talk a lot about John's 3 questions, right? One of those is, do they care for me? The other thing is there opportunities for them to learn, grow, and be developed? What is my growth plan? What does my career path look like? And that's one of the things in some studies that, that we look at and read, is that, hey, I think it's top 3 now, reasons for people taking jobs or moving away from jobs, is that there's a clear path of what their career trajectory looks like. Are they feeling connected to the mission of the organization? Is there progress happening often and in real time, and feedback from their managers? Are they feeling that they have a voice and they're able to share and their opinion counts? And so those things right there confirm exactly why you jumped in for us last year and partnered with Tim Elmore, and we developed leading a multi-generational team training and workshop, because this is what we need to understand from each generation. We talk about in that training, but we need to understand this for each generation and what they need in the workplace. So we've identified that obviously your generation, for some reason right now,
you're welcome.
Remember, it's just the first quarter. I don't know if you guys can all year long in 2024, that might be a challenge, but is that, hey, there's 2 areas. And so let's talk about, how do we engage those 2? Let's work through these. Because a lot of them are in the workforce right now. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But let's talk about that and how do we engage them.
And I want to make sure I don't think I said it at the top, but one thing that came out of this Gallup survey was hybrid and remote workers are especially hard hit by some of this disengagement and lack of engagement that we're seeing. So I think as a baby boomer, I continue to be baffled by that, to think, are we doing enough? So that these 6 areas Gallup identified, these 6 areas where the younger generations are struggling. Let's look at a few of these and say, what could leaders be doing? But also, let's just throw in a little bit of a spin on, if you have a hybrid or remote worker that's involved in that, are there some strategies we need to address with that? So once you
let's do that. So let's start first with this, making sure you understand around the hybrid and the remote side of things. And I'm going to give you some kind of action items that I think are extremely important. We hear a lot from organizations and leaders that communication is a challenge. Now, that's without being remote or hybrid. And so what I want to challenge us as leaders and people that are leading people and leading remote teams is that, man, we have to double, triple, quadruple down on our communication with them. When you think it's enough, when you think it's clear enough, you need to do it again, and you need to connect, and you need to communicate with them, and that goes for not only the vision and the mission and all, but that is on daily tasks and priorities and making sure that you're doing that. And so, what I would encourage you to do is, as you think about this, is how do I increase that engagement level with these younger generations, with being remote or even in the office, is what are our communication norms? What do I expect out of every team member, both communicating up, communicating to their peers, or even communicating to your team? I would also encourage you to use technology to foster collaboration with them. And the other thing too is they feel oftentimes disconnected. And I talked earlier about they want to know what their growth plan is and how they're being developed. Really try to drive mentorship or partnership in some of the projects and the work that are going on. You could look at this and say, well, Perry could totally handle that. But Perry could work with Chris on that. And then all of a sudden you got a little bit more of an engagement and a little bit more collaboration. And I think you'll see that number being engaged in what they're working on together just naturally rise.
Well, the statistic you said about they don't feel like someone cares about them at work. I've seen some other Gallup work around the importance of friendships in the workplace. If I feel like I have a friend, and you think about being remote or hybrid, coming and going from the office, I never connect to do that. One thing that came out of this survey that said, you could focus on your managers, that 70% of managers say they've not been trained how to manage a hybrid workforce and are increasingly less engaged, burned out, and looking for other jobs. I thought, oh my goodness, is that, as you said, is that when people are out you have the luxury of allowing people not to be in the office.
Yeah.
Generally, people like that, but it's not for everyone. But if you need to have a policy, you need to be clear. But your communication comment is big. The one thing that I think rescued me in some of this was really doubling down on the one-on-one to make sure that I have a scheduled, non-negotiable one-on-one time with every single person on the team. I'm stunned in the number of coaching calls I do where this is not a norm. This is an exception. So are you having the one-on-one time? Are you speaking with people? Are you connecting with people? Do they know that you know they're there? In that one-on-one time, can you do those three things that every follower is asking of you?
Yeah.
Do they know you're trying to help them? Do they know you care about them? Do they know they can trust you? And I just think finding ways to connect through the one-on-one and let people know, even though you're not in the office, you're not seen, you're seen by me. I see you, and letting them know that you're connecting, that someone does care about them. They have opportunities to learn and grow. They are connected to the mission and the vision. They know why they're important. These things start to really stack up in your favor as people feel like, hey, I want to be here. I want to be on your team.
You started off by talking about, hey, let's focus on the managers. And then you shared a stat that kind of just grabbed me. You're like 70% of managers are, in essence, going to be looking for another job. Well, leadership is contagious.
Yeah.
And if the managers are that way, what do you think then their team feels, or those that are working directly for them? And so we definitely got to start there and make that a priority.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
I think the other thing is we have to establish clear expectations for in-person office time, right? We talk about the disappointment gap, and we talk about the fact that is the gap between what is expected and what is reality. And so we need to make sure that we set that on the front end of what that looks like, especially with our younger team members who need to be around for mentoring, for development, for even just kind of like the osmosis, right? Like, what does it feel like to be connected and communicating and having conversations around what we do and our KPIs and what challenges do we have? Like, there's just a huge, I believe. Now, again, to your point, you can get creative and do it a different way, but not every role, every organization has to have office time all the time. But man, there's got to be some type of blend for it, that I think that will engage them behind the purpose and the mission of what we're doing and make them understand even further.
One thing Gallup suggested was the manager setting a good example by the manager being on site regularly.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a situation where managers, I think of you as an example here, you travel, you live a long way from the office, you could easily be work at home, but you are present when you're not traveling on the road. You are present 3 to 4, sometimes 5 days a week. You hardly ever less than 4, that you're present and people see you. Even though some of us are coming and going in the office, you're present. So you set a good example. And then that initiates these team member discussions. You have more authority as you talk about how should we manage this situation, thinking about, again, people feeling seen, people feeling valued, people feeling that they're connected to what you're doing. I'm not going to let distance get in the way of our moving forward with our relationship. Yeah.
When it comes to developing these people and helping them learn and grow, what I want to challenge us to do is to do it a little bit differently, to be creative, not to just have a standard kind of development track. What I want us to do is to look at each individual, we talk on here about the fact that everybody needs to be led well. Everybody needs to be led the way they need to be led. It's the same thing with development. And there are going to be different areas, whether it's because of their strengths or because of their interest or because of what some of their growth goals are. So as you think about that, as you build a development plan, as you help them learn, as you help them grow, get creative, make it personalized to what matters to them. And the only way that can happen is by taking the initiative to engage them and ask the questions, where do you want to grow in this area? What does that look like? And by doing that, I think we can increase that engagement percentage a little bit.
And the last one that I was taken by the Gallup survey said that they don't feel that their opinions count. And I thought, isn't that, speaking as a baby boomer, isn't that just like us to say, I'll tell you what you think. Just sit back and I'll tell you how to think. Instead, I was really taken when we did the course on leading in a multi-generational workforce. Tim Elmore talking about what is the value that these youngers bring. And I think if you want a place to start would be, as a team, determine those for you. What is it that they bring? If you need some, I can make some recommendations on things you could read. Tim Elmore's book on New Kind of Diversity is a great place to start. But just the sections on Gen Z to say they're very entrepreneurial. They're the most leadership-driven generation in a generation. They have more desire for leadership than any of the previous ones. They have a number of great attributes and qualities that they bring, but we overlook that because, they're young and they're snowflakes and they're whatever we're telling ourselves that is not true. We need to change that to a positive narrative. And the last thing I'll say is that one thing that really affected me was I had a leader challenge me once about, Perry, what do you think? And I was the younger at that time. He was the older. And I caved. I said, well, I think what you think, boss. What do you think? And I got a little snicker around the table. He didn't think that was funny. And he taught me a life lesson, which was you should always have a point of view. When you come to a meeting with the title of the meeting, have a point of view. Have thought about it. But leader, one thing you can do is insist that everybody on your team, from young to old, have a point of view. Tell those young people, I need you thinking about this. I need to know what you think about this. What would you do if you were me? If you were leading this, how would you do that? Get them talking, get them contributing, let them know you care. Are you going to do everything they say? Of course not. You're not going to do anything anybody said. However, you may get a different point of view. You may get something you hadn't thought about, and they do come with a different mindset. And I think it's positive. And I'm noticing that they have a lot of creative ideas. They can hack things. They see ways around things. They know how to put technology to work. You and I just got a lesson in the studio between takes around a technology thing that we thought, oh my gosh. We both looked at each other at the same time. We never heard of it. But, young Jake gave us a lesson on doing that. So I think there's a lot about engagement here, but once you wrap it up.
Yeah, there's a ton more that we could talk about that. And Perry is really behind taking Tim's content and making it so relevant to organizations. And so there's a lot more behind that, but we really just got to focus on how do we make them feel valued? How do we increase their engagement and a level? And it's so important for the success of any mission or purpose an organization is going after. It's so important right now, but even more importantly, and you mentioned this, in the future, because those generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they comprise of 46% of the workforce, and it is increasing daily, just like you talked about your generation stepping away, right? They are covering that gap. And so we've got to figure this out. And so if you don't, they're not like your generation where they just stick around and work through it. They're going to leave. They're like, I'm good, I'm out, right? It's kind of like maybe Baskin Robbins, the 32 flavors of ice cream. Hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go do this. And so I hope just a couple of things that we shared today, you'll have a different perspective on. You'll think a little bit different as you begin leading multi-generational team members. And by doing that, we believe that you'll retain talent and it'll drive better business results.
And I don't know if we said it or not, but the baby boomers are killing it. Thanks, Chris. And a reminder, if you'd like to know more about our offerings or get that learner guide, see our podcast family of offerings, do all that at maxwellleadership.com/podcast. You can also leave us a comment or a question there. We love hearing from you. Very grateful you'd spend this time with us. That's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a High Road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.